Hi, sorry about my voice. I'm sick or something. This is a video about The Eternal Party by H. Dark and Townsend. I'm not going to be explaining the plot in this video because I don't see a point to that, and I think my last video was completely pointless and kind of stupid, which is why I didn't make any more videos after that. The purpose of this video is to talk about thoughts I had while reading The Eternal Party, as well as some thoughts I had immediately after. I'm mostly going to be discussing, The Eternal Party's position as a work of art, how it executes its themes, and what it implies about, genre. But I've also never read another full novel of erotica before, so in a sense it's also kind of an exploration of the genre. And if I say things that frequent erotica readers know, sorry. I'm just trying to figure it out. So to give the quickest possible recap of this book, just to get everyone on the same page, but without actually going into any detail at all, The Eternal Party is about a Catwoman named Mila who gets trapped in a magic sex party house after losing her husband, and tries to escape with a sexy older fox guy who has the same problem, basically. Everyone else in the party is able to leave, but not them. And there's magic that makes it so that all of the felines have to obey every order that a canine gives them, unless if they have an owner. So Alonso becomes her owner for reasons of protection. Alonso is the sexy older fox guy, by the way. The target audience for this book is very obviously women who are furries and really into BDSM and pet play. The thing is that I'm not very into BDSM or pet play, but I am a furry and I am a woman, so I hit two of the four boxes. The Eternal Party is simultaneously a work of pornography and a book about grief, but I don't think it's meaningfully pornography about grief. The book seems to have almost cutaway segments where the characters can engage in their own sort of sexual narrative arc from foreplay to orgasm, obviously expecting the viewer to touch themselves along with it from how it's structured. These sort of feel like interludes, as they often pull us away from the broader narrative a bit, even if they're nestled quite comfortably in said narrative. You don't have to think about the house while you do your business, or at least Mila doesn't. The book doesn't really give a clear pattern for when exactly it's going to be all about sex or not. It sort of just seems to expect that you're going to get worked up along with the events of the story, like you're just along for the ride, I guess. And I don't know if that's normal for erotica or not. I don't know if erotica is normally there is one sex a chapter or something I have no idea how they structure this stuff. But I found that interesting because I feel like when you think of porn, you think of something that you are going to engage in simulated sexuality, I guess. And this book was not reliably that. This is, again, a book about grief. And grief is, after all, an unsexy feeling. And while that does seem to make it a difficult theme to have alongside getting railed by a sexy fox man, grief and sexuality do often interact in real life, which perhaps makes this a really good book to actually write. I guess I wish it felt less like it was cutting so hard between The Eternal Party and porn about The Eternal Party, but I've also never written a novel of my own, nor have I written erotica that's lasted longer than 2 chapters, so I don't really know how hard that is. For example, The Pervert by Remy Boydell is sometimes considered at least somewhat pornographic by some people, but it clearly isn't if you actually read it. The sex is so unstructured, and everything immediately before it is so unbelievably sad that it would be impossible to jerk off to, and even if you tried, it wouldn't be very rewarding. By contrast, The Eternal Party definitely feels like it wants to get you off. There isn't much of an argument for that not being the case. It even hits you with an epilogue that's basically just let's fuck the main girl, her older fox BF, and the celebrity one last time. Is all erotica like this? It feels like those old video games based off of Harry Potter movies or Narnia or whatever, where like you
The
watch a
house with the
cutscene
most
in which the
points.
story happens and then cut to gameplay that basically just gives you tasks to do or enemies to fight, and like the purpose of the cutscenes and the gameplay are just completely separate from one another. That's what the sex feels like in Eternal Party. You do the plot and then sometimes you take a break to have sex. Is this just what like erotica is? I've always been someone to argue that porn and horror, and also maybe comedy, but mostly porn and horror are like deeply, deeply related genres because their foremost mark of quality is how well they elicit a specific kind of natural human reaction from the reader or viewer, one being fear and the other being arousal. By this metric, comedy totally fits as well because a good comedy makes you laugh and a bad comedy doesn't, but a lot of overarching comedy plots don't have to be inherently funny in the same way that porn plots have to be sexy or horror plots have to be scary. I've been trapped in a creepy town where there's a big evil demon that wants to kill me is inherently scary. And the hottest, richest, freakiest guy picked me and only me is inherently sexy. But girl gets hired at a big important firm after losing her job and tries to win over her mean evil boss who hates her could easily have been played straight. But that's not entirely true, is it? Like, yeah, a lot of comedies aren't based on inherently funny concepts, but are funny moment to moment. But there are plenty of comedies that could only have been comedies, like Team America World Police, or Elf, or Norbit. If porn or horror tried that, it would fall flat, right? Would you read a piece of erotica that's like basically just a murder mystery, but every other chapter the lead character takes a break to fuck guys off a dating app? No, you would want to read murder mystery erotica where the main character and her assistant have an inappropriate workplace relationship, because that's super scandalous, and scandal is hot. A murder mystery comedy can just be a normal murder mystery, but all the lead characters are funny people, and it works just fine. But like, I said that the Eternal Party is not porn about grief, so does that make it bad at being porn? Like, no, because ultimately the main character, Mila, is trapped in a kinky sex party where she has to learn to open up and has an owner, and isn't that sexy, at least to a certain kind of person? But also, it maybe could have been hotter, right? There is porn that fetishizes grief out there. I've read it on AO3. It's doable. Also, the character is trapped in a house, and they never do much to make the feeling of being trapped feel sexy, which is kind of a missed opportunity, at least from like a porn standpoint. Also, fuck Elf. I really hate Elf. So the thing about the themes of grief in the Eternal Party is that it sort of positions the house and its motives as a force of nature. We talk about the house and what it wants, but we all understand that the house doesn't really want anything. It's operating by a set of rules laid out at its foundation, and it can't really be blamed for anything. The house is not meaningfully an antagonist in this story. I guess you could see the house as an antagonist because the main characters want to leave it and it won't let them, but the way to get out is to fix your issues, and the house isn't a person, so that's all obviously a ploy for the character's real worst enemy being their own responses to grief. Alonso sort of holds Mila back from fixing her issues throughout basically the entire book, so maybe he's the antagonist. But it also kind of seems like Mila would have gotten hurt if she just ran off into the house with no guidance, which of course is probably also true of Siddhartha Gautama, so I guess you could read Alonso as the antagonist of the story in the same way that you can sort of read Siddhartha Gautama's dad as like the antagonist of the story of the Buddha. Mila is, of course, let out of the house after one day of doing something outside his supervision. But like, Milo and Alonso fundamentally suffer from the same problem, which isn't even really grief, but more so helplessness in grief. Neither one of them can really take care of themselves, even when they're together in the house. They'd be in complete shambles outside of it. They both have to get over their respective shit before they can leave. And like, maybe Alonso helped Mila get over her shit, but he also kind of didn't. Mila did. Not just in the end, but sort of like the entire time. Alonso was so overprotective that he prevented her from really improving. And like, I mean, Aisha was not an issue for Mila whatsoever, I don't think. Were the other canines even actually that dangerous? Mila, on the other hand, did fix Alonso's shit. There are sort of two readings you could come away with here. The feminist one where Mila is extremely emotionally capable but fell prey to the desire to hide from fear, but ultimately always had it in her to overcome her struggles and help others through them as well. And the unfeminist one where Mila is saddled with the responsibility of Alonso and doesn't even get mad at him for constantly shifting blame away from himself, resulting in her being trapped longer than she would have been otherwise. I don't like being miserable, so I prefer reading this as Mila being super cool and competent. This also helps Alonso shouting at the cheetah girl, I think her name was Vivian, look worse, because that scene definitely did make me hate Alonso more. I don't hate Alonso, I was just really turned off by the way he shouted at her. Alonso also let the authority get to his head, which they truthfully could have spent more of the book talking about, but in order to explore all the stuff they did explore and that, this book would have been like 500 pages long, and at a certain point you just have to know when to quit. There's also one transgender character in this book, and like a single page into her existing, she starts explaining her transition to Mila, which, like, as a transgender person, I would never do. Also, there's like magic pronoun detection magic in the house that makes it so you can't misgender people, which is like cool, but then she explains that she figured out that she was trans because of the magic pronoun detection magic, which is the most like cisgender person writing a trans character thing I've ever read, which I guess isn't like bad, but like, oh my god. They released a sequel, and I will read it at some point, and I might also make a video about it. I'm sorry that I didn't really have much of a conclusion in this video, because this wasn't like an essay. This was more of just like a bunch of thoughts that I wanted to spurt out at the world. Please give me your commentary if you have any. Thank you for listening.